As 2024 comes to a close, I personally can't help but reflect upon the year as a whole when it comes to what I did the most: gaming. At the start of the year, there was speculation in the air of how 2024 would follow up 2023. Some thought it would serve as a gap year for GTA 6, some thought it would be the start of a new era for indie games, especially with the amount of studio layoffs and budget cuts that would continue to affect the industry. So today, let's look back on the year and ask ourselves, was 2024 a memorable year in gaming? Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Anna. I'm a variety gamer who's been playing games for well over 20 years. I hope everyone here is having a great holiday. I can't believe it's already the end of the year. If I think about it too much, I might have an existential crisis because I feel like this year went by really fast. Even the holidays is passing by really quickly for me. By the time this video comes out, Christmas will be over. The Game Awards also went by just like that. I actually got to attend this year's Game Awards thanks to my friend in the industry, and I actually got to be pretty close to the stage. I did post a vlog of my experience there, but here are just a few clips to show right now.
Twice before here at the Game Awards, and it is coming next year. Astro Bot!
And people who know me know how happy I was that Astro Bot won. I have said multiple times this was my personal game of the year. We also live in a time where every single company is doing like a Wrapped now, and that includes gaming as well. Just to go over my wrap with you guys, my most used console this year was definitely the PS5. I feel like this year was the first year where I felt like I really got my value out of the PS5. Earlier years, I would mostly use it as a media console, but this year I feel like it's the first time I played a bunch of good games on it. So my top 5 games for my PS Wrapped was Astro Bot in 5th place, Metaphor ReFantazio in 4th place, Final Fantasy VII Remake in 3rd place, Persona 3 Reload in 2nd place, and then Final Fantasy Rebirth in 1st place, for a total of 259 hours played. My Nintendo Wrap was a lot less impressive actually. I had Tears of the Kingdom at 37 hours in 1st place, Echoes of Wisdom at 23 hours in 2nd place, and Catherine Full Body at 11 hours in 3rd place. I feel like Nintendo in general just didn't have the strongest year, so that explains why I didn't use my Switch that much. And my Steam Wrapped, it's actually not even worth showing because I barely played games on Steam. I think I was just really leaning toward using my consoles more. Anyway, for the point of this video, I really want to look back on this year and look at all the games that I personally beat to ask myself the question that I asked at the beginning of this video on whether this felt like a memorable year in gaming. I was one of those people at the start of the year thinking how this year was going to follow up 2023 because that year was just an insane year for gaming. We had Tears of the Kingdom, a new Final Fantasy game, Baldur's Gate 3, and to be honest, I was one of those people who was like, I feel like I'm going to be let down by 2024 just because how do you follow up that? I think there's also a narrative in the community thinking like this year could be considered a weak year just because a game like Astro Bot won Game of the Year. But I think it's only fair that I give my personal assessment after I looked back at all the games that I played this year, so that's what I want to do for this video. I think this is actually going to be a really cozy video, so go get your blankets or your tea or whatever, and I'm just going to be yapping through all my game reviews for every single game that I beat this year, and then come back to that question on how I felt about the year overall. So let's just get started. By the way, how I do this is I just write a brief review and grade each game that I beat in my personal Notion, so I just have a log of all the games that I beat every year. So this year I beat 20 games, and I think that's a little bit more than last year. I think I beat around like 17, but last year's games were longer, so I think that sounds about right. By the way, I'm talking about all the games that I personally beat, and that includes games that didn't necessarily release in 2024 as well. So I started the year off with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I gave that a B+. My review said, this is coming from someone who didn't play the original 7 game, so obviously the game doesn't hit the same for me as it does to the OG fans. It's what you expect out of a modern Final Fantasy game, combat, plot, and character-wise, which isn't bad. There's a good amount of delightful moments that get whiplashed by some shocking events that lead to a sense of attachment to an awesome cast of characters you go through some memorable times with. I only have 3K. Should I splurge? F it.
ハンドクリームを指の一本一本に
Oh my!
丁寧に塗り込んでいくからね。
What the hell? Oh my god, he's completely out of it. You good? You got that post-nut clarity yet? My docking of the grade mostly comes from how there's a limit to how enjoyable the Final Fantasy formula can get. It can be repetitive and sometimes outright tedious when it comes to things like side quests. Overall, I had a fun time, the game is gorgeous, and it made me want to play the original game. I mostly played this to prep for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth because I really wanted to experience Rebirth as it came out, so I obviously wanted to play Remake before that came out. I feel like I'm going to be doing this pretty often where I just play like the prereq of certain games that are coming out. Like GTA 6 is actually a good example. I actually haven't played a Grand Theft Auto game before, but I obviously want to experience 6 with the world, so I think I need to at least play one GTA game before that one comes out. The next game I played was Persona 3 Reload, and I gave that a B+. My review says, I feel like working backwards from playing Persona 5 to Persona 4 to this game gives me a biased view. This game was fun to play but suffered from pacing issues and character connection/development. I can see how the sequel is iterated on its shortcomings. However, the remake aesthetics are gorgeous and the gameplay itself is addictive. I couldn't stop going through a Tartarus and completing my daily life tasks/social links until hours passed by. The ending wraps up the message behind this game beautifully, especially with the ending credits song. Happy to have played it. What? What? Oh my god, thank god. I wasn't even there for that long. What the f? I actually feel like I'm in the minority when it comes to how I feel about Persona 3 Reload. I felt like most of the game doesn't really have a real plot, and that's what I didn't like about it. I think it's definitely my least favorite Persona game that I played besides the spin-offs. But basically how I would rank it is, I think my favorite Persona is definitely Persona 5. My favorite cast is probably Persona 4, and then my favorite ending is probably Persona 3. Even though I felt like I had my gripes with it, I cannot deny the fact that I kept wanting to pick up the controller and play the game, so I think that speaks to how fun the gameplay actually is. It's actually kind of crazy to think that Persona 3 Reload came out this year because it just feels like so far away, and my brain is just so occupied with Metaphor right now. The next game I beat was called Rental, and this I didn't really give a grade because it only took like 30 minutes to beat, but all I wrote was cute and creepy. If you saw this GIF or GIF or whatever you want to call it that was floating on the internet a lot at the time, I found out that this was from a video game and it's from Rental, so that's why I decided to play it. It's just this like really short, like kind of spooky experience, so it was cute. I would play it if you just want like a really short horror experience, and it's free, so why not? Oh! What was that? Oh! What the f was that? The next game I beat was Shinkansen Zero. This I gave an A, and I wrote in my review, I love games that have simple, interesting concepts, and the Exit 8 concept was really cool. I'm glad to have experienced the Chilla's art take on this genre in this creepy, unsettling short game. What the f? Oh! Oh! So I really love this game. It was my first Chilla's art game that I personally actually played. Every other Chilla's art game, I just watched someone else play it. I think Chilla's art has such a cool lineup when it comes to games in the Japanese horror genre. And if you aren't familiar with the Exit 8 concept, it's basically Spot the Anomaly. Chilla's art actually has another game coming out in the beginning of the year. I think it's called Cursed Digicam, and it's like apparently their first game in Unreal Engine. So I'm honestly not sure if I'm brave enough to play that game, but I really do want to play it because I love Chilla's art games. But yeah, this is a really cool indie game and I would highly recommend it. The next game I played was an indie game called Vemba and I gave this a B. This game is only 1.5 hours long, but it hits hard if you can relate to the story. As a child of immigrants who weren't well off in the States, I saw myself in the sun so much. Heartwarming, but also sad. This game actually made me cry and I really connected to the story as a child of immigrants, and I'm sure other second gen kids who play this game will get in their feels too. There's a wonderful and beautiful culture that's a part of you. It would be a shame if you chose not to be a part of it, just because you think it's not normal. It's to wonder why he wanted to turn his back on all the unique and special things his roots have to offer. Maybe he's thinking it's better not to be unique or stand out in any way. I really love games that just explore culture and show stories that we can connect to, because I play a lot of games that are just like RPGs and adventures, so it's not often that I encounter stories like these, and I really hope that this kind of game encourages more stories like this to be told. The next game I played is Buckshot Roulette, and I gave this an A-. My review says, fun game that's only $3 on Steam. I always love simple concept games made great. So worth it for the price point with great music too. Hope they add multiplayer in the future, and they did end up adding multiplayer that I haven't played yet, but I really want to. Buckshot Roulette is basically Russian roulette with extra steps. I thought it was really fun for like a short experience. The publisher for this game is Critical Reflex, and they had a hell of a year. They had Buckshot Roulette, they had Mouthwashing, and they had Arctic Eggs. This is one of those publishers I'm definitely keeping an eye on because they just had great indie games come out this year. The next game I played was also an indie game called Pools. I gave this a B, and my review says, a really creepy and unsettling game, which is my type of horror game. I like games that don't outright go for cheap jump scares and scaring players, but play with the mind to scare people. Only thing was, I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to be solving for anything in the game or just walking. The achievements I didn't get suggest I was supposed to be solving for puzzles, but I just kept walking linearly. This is one of those games that I saw on TikTok and I was like, fuck it, why not? It's one of those like liminal spaces, backrooms kind of games, and it made me feel anxious and really tensed up the whole time. I don't know why, but I thought it would be maybe a cozy experience. It wasn't. It was just like making me feel uncomfortable the whole time, but I guess that's why the way it was done was actually done pretty well. The next game I beat was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I gave this a B+. Pacing and story were great until the 20-hour mark when things started to get pretty checklisty, grindy, and tedious. The side content just became too much, which led to a lot of burnout. I would have told myself to not worry too much about completing the map, but I think it's important to judge a game based on the overall experience I had and not excuse the side content being a bad experience just because it's not part of the core experience. Gorgeous game though, with great music and characters. Looking forward to part 3, mostly because the ending got me confused. Yo! They got that good stuff out here in Junon. The planet may be dying, but not today. Not in Crow's Nest. Yeah, I've talked about this before, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth I had my gripes with because I just burned out a lot, especially around the desert area. I forgot what it was called. But I had talked about this. I feel like if I had to go back and play it again, I would not do all the side content that I signed myself up for. I don't know why I was so set on completing the map because it burned me out so bad. But yeah, I guess I'm proud that I did that. But it did kind of at the same time affect my experience overall, but I still really appreciated a lot of parts of the experience, and I'm curious to see how they iterate on this in part 3. The next game I played was a game called Little Kitty Big City. I gave this a B, and my review says, similar to Unpacking, it's wholesome, cozy, and cute, but expensive for how long you play it, 3.5 hours. Navigation took a bit to get used to, and there were some glitches. Also think the Tokyo setting is a little overdone, would love to see different cities for games like these, but it brightened my not so great day, so I appreciated playing it. it. I posted a review of this game on my TikTok, but yeah, it was mostly the clunkiness of it, how short it was, and I felt like the game wasn't really doing anything new. There was no novelty to it, which is why I only gave it a B. The next game I beat was an old one, and it was Silent Hill 2. I gave this an A, and I said brilliantly, narratively constructed, incredibly sad. It's impressive how much foreshadowing and symbolism everything in this game carries. Definitely required help with some puzzles and plot analysis, but after understanding a lot of the major character stories, this game is mind-blowing. I mean, I talked about this game so much, I have a whole YouTube video on it, you can go watch that. But yeah, this is just a classic for a reason, and I loved my experience with it. I don't think there's much else to say when I made a whole video dedicated to it, and I played the original just to prepare for the remake. The next game I beat was an indie game called Skim, and I gave this a B-. My review says, although this game is gorgeous, has a great soundtrack, and has a heartwarming story about self-discovery, the core gameplay is quite repetitive, and by the 35th level, I found myself pretty tired out of the gameplay. Nice game to shut your brain off to, but nothing super challenging or addicting about it. I ended up posting a review of this because I was just really looking forward to this game, and I was kind of deceived by the aesthetics of it all. The gameplay is so repetitive, and there's way too many levels that I felt like it was just getting really tedious. But yeah, this was unfortunately one of those indie games where I was actually looking forward to it for a long time, because I saw the trailer for it I think like years ago, and I was keeping my eye on it for the whole time, and then it kind of just let me down when I actually played it. The next game I played was a classic indie game that is quite old now called Off. A really weird and abstract game full of cool character design, sound design, quirkiness, some horror, and great music. Puzzles and battling were rudimentary, but the strangeness of it all kept me going. Really cool ending choices and lots of things left to wonder and interpret. I mostly played this game because I knew it was like a cult classic and one of those games that inspired Undertale. It's also kind of weird that the same year that I beat this game is the same year that they decided to announce a re-release for this game. They're releasing this game on Switch and Steam, and it's getting a definitive version as well as an official English translation, and I just thought it was wild that it just happened to be this year that I played the game. But yeah, I've seen a resurgence in the Off fandom, and I think it's really cool that they are so excited for this to finally get some love again. The next game I beat was Catherine Full Body. This is another Atlas game. I gave this an A- and said, great game and a fun time just like Catherine Classic. Only thing is I wish I'd looked up on how to get the Rin route, because the original 2 routes were endings I was already familiar with. I think the Rin route is a very cool addition and would have liked to experience it as well.
なんだこのくぼみ。奥になんかあるぞ。これはメガネ？とりあえずかけてみるか。
内藤や姿が見られるというロマンの結晶はトイレの個室で付け外しが可能だ。存分におた
便所行ってくる。オーランドさんがバツイチって。
So you know how with Persona 5 there was Persona 5 Vanilla and then Persona 5 Royal? This is basically the Catherine version of that. I played Catherine Classic first and then decided to finally play Catherine Full Body, where they add this third character named Rin. And that route is like entirely new content for me, so I actually wish I looked up how to get the content that was locked behind the Rin route, because it's pretty different from the other 2 routes. I feel like there's some people who hear puzzle game and they're like, that's not for me, but I really think that you should give this one a chance because the gameplay is addicting, the story is wild, and it's an Atlas game, it's a fun time. I think it's worth people's time. The next game I beat was this indie game that you can play for free called Parasite in Love. I did not give it a rating, and all I said was honestly disturbing. I saw this game on TikTok and I was like, why not? I got 30 minutes to spare. It's like a dating sim where this like amoeba parasite trapped in like the protagonist's brain falls in love with the protagonist. Here, I wanted to show you what our children inside you look like. There's even one that looks like you. Here. Isn't it cute? Absolutely not. It's creepy, it's weird. If you really want to play it, it's there for free, so you can check it out. The next game I played is the only game that I gave an S rating to, and that is, of course, Astro Bot. My review says, an incredible 3D platformer that reminded me how fun video games can be. The creativity, charm, cuteness, design, music, everything about this game was perfect. I only wish there were more levels. I love my buddy Astro Bot so much. After Astro Bot won Game of the Year, I saw a bunch of people say, how can a game that didn't really do anything new win Game of the Year? It didn't do anything revolutionary. It was just like another 3D platformer that we've seen before, and it took inspiration from all the games that came before it. And so that I kind of just say, it's just really fun. Above all, it's just fun. I personally don't believe that a game has to be revolutionary or novel to the industry to win Game of the Year. I think what really matters is the quality of the game itself. But yeah, there's not much more to say. I've talked about this game in my other YouTube videos. I've given a whole review on it on TikTok, and I love it. All I can really wish now is for people to check out Astro Bot and have as much fun as I did. The next game I beat was The Plucky Squire, and I gave this a B-. Great idea, bad execution. The great, novel concept, aesthetic, and art style, puzzles between 2D and 3D, combat. The bad, performance issues, character and world writing / dialogue, extremely linear with no rest in between puzzles. If they were to put in a little more effort into every aspect of this game, this could have been great. I've talked a bunch about how this game is pretty mid to me and disguised behind its aesthetic. I honestly don't want to keep critiquing this game because I've done it a bunch of times, but yeah, B- is my honest review on it. The next game I beat was Until Dawn, and I gave this an A. This is the remastered version. Love this game even after watching a Let's Play many years ago and trying it out myself. It's like watching a movie and playing a game at the same time. It's great to play during spooky season if you're in the mood for a horror night, and I imagine it would be so fun to play with friends. I love looking up all the alternate routes afterwards and discovering how to kill / save everyone. The many routes this game can take and the many clues you can find makes for an interesting story. Jess, Matt, and Josh died in my playthrough.
Okay.
What did you do?
What the fuck? It came up.
What the? Isn't this where she dies?
Oh, there is a fireplace.
Wow. We don't need a fire to heat things up.
Shut up! Stop being horny!
I am a lady.
No!
Hey! Yeah, pricks! That means you! I know you're out there. What the fuck are you trying to do?
You're gonna die, bitch! No! Did she die? I was really trying to beat this game without anybody dying, but I didn't realize how freaking hard that actually is. I really did try though. I think this game is actually really great to play during October and the Halloween season. I just feel like it's one of those like typical American cabin in the woods kind of horror story. I think next year for the spooky season, I'm definitely going to try to play this with someone else because I think it's actually really fun to play with people, even if it's like a one-player game. The next game is The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. I gave this an A. My review says, a great game to play on handheld, was really enjoyable and easy to sit on the couch and get through this game. Very well designed, the mechanics don't feel stale or become boring throughout the game because the gameplay is able to build upon itself so creatively. I loved how Zelda's first title as a protagonist feels like a Zelda game, but it still feels different from playing as Link. It's not too long or short of a game and aesthetically beautiful. If you travel or commute and you just have a lot of time to play on handheld consoles, I really recommend this game. It was such a pleasant experience. Nintendo, however many years later, is still able to prove that they can entertain through this Zelda gameplay and concept. But yeah, I didn't record gameplay for this at all because I was just mostly on my couch playing it on handheld, and I felt like I was really transported back to when I would play handheld Zelda games. The next game I played is Life is Strange Double Exposure. I gave this a B-. Although I love the winter aesthetic, music, and characters, there were too many plot holes, unanswered questions, and a rush ending for this to be called a worthy sequel to the first first game. By the end, I was left feeling confused, disappointed, and conflicted by the last 2 chapters that I felt it wasn't even worth my time trying to figure it out. Yeah, this was quite a disappointment for me, and I really like the Life is Strange games. I think it was quite obvious that they were trying to set up the ending of the game for a sequel to this game, and because of that, a lot of things were just left unanswered. I think if they didn't try so hard to set up for a sequel, it could have felt more like a complete experience. Also, a minor thing that I realized was the game was limited to like 6 or 7 sections throughout the entire game. I don't know if that was because of a budget cut choice, but I felt like it was really limiting the capacity for the storytelling. Anyways, I'm still gonna play the sequel to this game, but I feel like it shouldn't have been a setup for a sequel in the first place. The last game that I played this year was Silent Hill 2 Remake, and I gave this an A+. A faithful and incredible remake of the original game. It was fascinating seeing it adapted to modern times, be absolutely terrified playing through it, and see how they were able to add so many more hours of content. The acting was amazing, the gameplay was fun, and it was one of the best horror games I've ever played. My last YouTube video is basically a very detailed review of the remake, so check that out if you like more insight onto how I felt about this remake, but overall, I loved it. I think it's going into my Hall of Fame in terms of horror video games, and it's just perfect in terms of my type of horror. One that doesn't have like a lot of jump scares, and it's just like vibes mostly that's terrifying. I want more games like that, so if you have any recommendations, please leave them in the comments for me. And that is it, everyone. Those are all my reviews for every single game I beat in 2024. I was kind of hoping I would be able to beat Metaphor ReFantazio in time for this video, but I realized I'm actually nowhere near the end of it, so I'm going to be beating that most likely after the new year. So now that I've gone through every single game that I played this year, I want to go back to that question on how I personally felt about 2024 in gaming. First, I'd like to say that this is one of the most subjective questions you can ask anyone. You know, you could be someone who played exclusively indie games, and this could have been an amazing year for indie games for you. You could have been someone who only plays farming sims, and maybe it was just one of the best revolutionary years for farming sims. So because this is such a biased question in the first place, I'm going to give a biased answer. I think by my standards, I would not say that this year is a weak year by any means. The fact that we got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Persona 3 Reload, Astro Bot, Metaphor ReFantazio, and Silent Hill 2 Remake, I think that lineup in itself is enough for me to be like, this was actually a pretty strong year in gaming for me. There were definitely highs and lows for me though. I think at the beginning of the year, it was definitely a high with Rebirth and Persona 3 Reload, and then in the summer it was kind of a low for me because I was not playing the Elden Ring DLC, so I was pretty bored. And then in the fall, a huge lineup of games came out, and that was like an insane period for releases. If I were to put it in simple terms, I think this year impressed me with its year in gaming, but it was not quite enough to meet 2023, and I can't help but compare it against 2023 because it was just the year prior. So my overall sentiment on how I feel on this year in gaming is that maybe I started off the year with some preconceived notions on how this year would go, but ultimately I'm happy a lot of those expectations were proven wrong, and I can walk away saying that personally, this is a good year in gaming. Looking forward into 2025, I honestly really don't know what to expect for the new year. There's not a ton of releases that I'm prepping for right now because I feel like a lot of releases are just unannounced right now. I'm really anticipating that Claire obscure game that was announced quite a while ago. I'm really looking forward to Subnautica 2 Early Access. The first one is one of my favorite games of all time. But those are all games that just say 2025 and don't have confirmed release dates yet, so I don't really know what I'm waiting to play next. If you guys have any anticipated titles you're looking forward to in the new year, please leave them in the comments for me to check out. And please leave also in the comments how you felt about 2024 personally. So that pretty much concludes this video, but I did want to give a little bit of a life update before signing off. Ironically enough, the day after the Game Awards, I was actually laid off, and I was at this position for almost like 3 years. It was working in gaming and gaming adjacent communities, so I was pretty crushed. I've had time to process it all though, so I think I'm okay now emotionally. But the reason why I'm sharing this now is because this is pretty much going to be my content creator arc, I guess. I guess there's no other time better than now to go full-time content creation for a little bit, at least until I find my next gig. I would still like to stay in the industry and work in gaming, but I'm also not in a huge rush to just find anything. I would like to find something that is the right fit for me. But until then, I guess expect more gaming content from me because I'm just gonna have so much more time to actually play video games. And thank you guys so much for sticking around and supporting that content in the first place. I really didn't expect this to happen going into the new year, but I guess that's just life. I hope you guys have an amazing holiday and new year. The next video will definitely be in January, so please be on the lookout for that. And until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!